Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is the first in a series of City Talk discussions with candidates in New York's 2009 city elections. Forget about it. No way. Impossible. Don Quixote had much better prospects. No windmills here, only Mike 9-0's Bloomberg. Maverick, yes. Mayor, nah. My guest is Tony Avella, councilman from the 19th District in northeastern Queens. He's here to talk about the state of the city, the state of the council, Mike Bloomberg, what bugs him, and why he's got the mayoral bug. Welcome, Mr. Councilman.
It's a pleasure, as always.
I've asked you this before. What are you smoking? What are you smoking?
Nothing.
Okay.
I just happen to believe that we can run city government better than we are. We can take the politics out of it. We can take the money out of it. But there's only one way to do it, and that's the type of campaign we're raging for mayor.
Meaning, be specific.
Meaning,
come on.
This has to
You're
be
taking money out of politics?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that amazing?
No.
You know, and that's why some, the political pundits like yourself are asking, how can I do this?
Right.
Because you look at the money. Is that all there is? I mean, then why don't we just say whoever runs for office, go out and raise the most money and you win? No voting. Where's democracy in this country anymore if it's all about money? It's not about the issues, your experience, what your vision is for the city. That's what it should be about. That's what our campaign is about.
Okay, but in order to resonate with the public or publics, you need to get your message out. But to get your message out, guess what you need? You need money.
Well,
you need mom. You need money, organization, and message.
Well,
you may have the message, but money.
Well, we don't have the money. That's clear.
How do you get it?
Well, you get it by grassroots donations, and there is campaign finance, remember, in the city of New York. So once we raise $250,000 of matchable donations, we get $1.5 million. That'll, and I will reach that level, and we'll be competitive then. But
now, this is it. Let's differentiate between a primary and a general election. In the primary, your presumptive opponent, as of this moment, is Bill Thompson and not Anthony Weiner. So it's Avella and Thompson 1-on-1. How do you beat Thompson before you get at the mayor?
We beat him by a real grassroots campaign. I mean, we're beating him at some of these candidates' nights that we go out. I get a much better reception after I talk about the issues than my Democratic opponent does. We beat him by bringing up the issues, by going to the grassroots, by going to street fairs, by going to any political forum that we can go to.
But doesn't he do the same thing?
Well, there's a different message here.
Okay, talk about the message. What is Tony Avella's message? What are your priorities? What's your agenda?
Well, my message is I'm Mr. Outsider, and actually City Hall News did a whole big article about it, calling me Mr. Outsider. I'm the average guy who doesn't have a political agenda, just wants to make his city better. I don't, listen to the powers to be. I'm probably one of the most independent, other than Charles Barron in the city council.
I mean, you look at the voting record. I mean, clearly, we'll talk about you voting against council raises, which parenthetically your wife wasn't particularly happy.
Yeah, exactly.
But a whole series of initiatives and changes.
And that's what we'll talk about. And I think people respond to that. They're fed up with the typical politician who does what he or she wants and not what the community wants and the people of this city want. We have too many elected officials who get in office, they talk great things, and then once they get in, it's like they don't exist anymore. People are fed up.
They become totally self-interested instead of mostly self-interested.
Absolutely. My campaign is about, I'm more interested in you and the people of this city than I am myself. And I think I've demonstrated that in my role in the city council. And that separates me from the others. What separates me from Bill Thompson is I worked my way up the hard way. I was on my own community board. I worked in government. I worked for 2 mayors. I never got a hand up from anybody.
And you won your seat handily
in a very Republican district. I'm the first Democrat to win it. On the other hand, Bill Thompson, let's look at his father was in politics. His father's a judge. He got a hand up. He had political influence already before he even ran for political office. That's the difference between me and him. I'm the average guy. I got there by hard work, and I got there by representing my constituents.
Okay. The New York Times has described your campaign approach as a minimalist. Where are you with this campaign? The last time we talked, there was no campaign manager, there was no fundraiser, there was no press person, your office was your cell phone. Okay. Where are we in,
we're actually
mid-May?
We're actually putting together the campaign team. We had to wait till sort of the end because we didn't have the money. I'm not selling my soul to raise the money that some of the, that Bill Thompson is raising. So we have the campaign manager. We have a campaign headquarters. We'll be up and running, and by the end of May, we'll be ready to go for the petitioning.
Talk a little bit more about what this guerrilla campaign is going to be, because it's got to be exactly that. No matter, I mean, you've got, what do you expect to raise in outside money? What's the minimum that you can run and get your message out?
Well, we need to get to that 250,000
so
match.
So you get the match.
So we get the match. Once we get the match, we'll be fine. Even without the match, we would still be fine. This is a grassroots campaign. We're not going to have the money to go on TV. I knew that from the beginning.
Okay.
Because to do that, you have to sell your soul to raise big dollars from the big special interests. And once you do that, you are lost because you have made promises to get that money. They don't give you that big money for nothing because they like you. So once you start dipping into that, huge pot of money, you are finished representing the people.
Okay, wait a second. So in a sense, you're making the same argument Mike Bloomberg is at the other end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Mike Bloomberg says, I'm unique because I am so rich I cannot be bought by the special interest. Your argument is, I'm so poor I can't be bought by the special interest.
That's actually
Maybe this
true.
is a nice contrast in terms of campaigning.
Right.
I might believe you as I tend to subscribe to Fred Siegel's characterization that the mayor, in this case, buys the special interest rather than the special interest buying him, or makes that argument. So this is an interesting contrast.
Yeah, and it's actually an interesting point that you make, because that's why Mike Bloomberg got elected, in my opinion. A lot of people thought, oh, here's a person who's self-financed. He's not beholden to the special interest. Of course, he works with the special interest. And of course, the other aspect of that is he doesn't care about you and I.
He doesn't feel your pen doesn't want to.
He doesn't care.
So you're saying that he's the special interest?
Yeah, he's the special interest unto himself.
Okay. Let's articulate a little bit of an agenda. You get elected on whatever date it is. I can't even imagine.
Oh, it would be January 1st.
Okay.
November something.
You get sworn in on January 1. What is the first thing that you do? What's your agenda? What are your priorities?
Well, the first thing I do when it comes to, there are a number of priorities when it comes to different agencies. The first thing is like the Department of Education. Joel Klein gets fired. I would be happy to say to this guy, thank you for your service. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Okay, why?
Because he's awful.
In what way is he awful?
Well, he and Mike Bloomberg have been running the education system like a business. You cannot do that. There's no communication with parents, teachers, and the principals. We're only teaching to the test. We don't educate our kids. We just tell them how to pass the test. So Mike Bloomberg can get up and say, look, the reading and math scores are going up, when in fact there's been no difference. The national tests, which are also given in the city schools, show it's flatlined. There has been no improvement in the 8 years Mike Bloomberg has had control.
Okay.
And that's also Klein's fault.
Okay. On June 30th, the law that established mayoral control in 2002 sunsets. Something's got to happen in the next several weeks.
Right.
What do you expect to happen, or more, what would you like to see happen, particularly looking at it as mayor on January 2010?
Well, if I'm looking at it as the next mayor of the city of New York, probably the best scenario would be to say to the state legislature, do a one-year extension. Allow me as the new mayor to come in and put up a new system, rather than they put up the system and then the new mayor is handcuffed, assuming it's not Mike Bloomberg.
So you're saying a one-year extension of the current system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because what I'd like to do is...
And what would you change? What would you then recommend about changing that system?
Well, see, I don't want to be Mike Bloomberg. I don't want to say, I've got the solution, it's my way or the highway. I want to be able to say, after the general election, assuming I win in November, to start working with the parents, the teachers, and the principals, all the stakeholders, the unions, and sit down between November and the day I take office in January, come up with a new system. Direct mail control with no oversight doesn't work. I mean, Mike Bloomberg has destroyed the system. And we had a wonderful opportunity to really remake it. He blew it. Going back to the old Board of Education doesn't work. And remember, who was the head of the Board of Education when it was at its worst? Bill Thompson. We don't want to go back to that either. We want to create a system.
That was a good transition shot at
well, remember, when test scores were going down, who was head of the Board of Education? Bill Thompson. We want to come up with a system where everybody feels they have a stake in it. And that's what the conversations that I want to have between Election Day and the day I take over. I want everybody who's involved in the education system to be a stakeholder in the solution. I don't want it just to come from me, because nobody knows the system better than the teachers and the parents and the principals. Why aren't they more involved in the process?
Okay. Moving off the mayor for a moment, and in this one small area, talk about the city council as an institution, and also the city council as a body of individuals, and particularly the speaker. So do a rant.
Do a rant. It's awful.
Go ahead. That's it?
Yeah, no.
You want more than it's awful.
The city council is supposed to be an equal partner with the mayor.
No, wait a minute. It's not supposed to be. Not under the state constitution and the charter. It's a junior partner. Oh, come on.
Well, it could be if we really
It could be a little bit more powerful, but come on.
If we fulfilled our responsibility. One, we can't do that now because we have a speaker, Christine Quinn, who just goes along with whatever the mayor wants to do.
Now, is that true? I mean, I've heard council members and others talk about her as the deputy mayor for mayoral relations.
Yeah.
Is it your perception that it's really that close a relationship?
Yes. And I think it has to do with her political agenda. You know, that somehow she feels if the mayor gets reelected, then she runs for mayor in 4 years, assuming she wins her seat back and assuming she wins the speakership, which I don't think is a slam dunk at all, that she would then get the mayor's support in 4 years. I think that's what she was planning to do if the mayor left now. Clearly, the city council is so anti-democratic, it is ridiculous. The power of the speaker has to be curtailed. Individual members have literally no say in what goes on. You know, and I can bring up the unethical 25% pay raise. You know, the Lulu,
which you voted against.
Which I voted against and refused. I mean, I have not taken that as my salary. It's not included in my future pension. I believe in putting my money where my mouth is. I'm the only council member who refuses the anti-good government Lulu. The power of the speaker is enormous.
As chairman of one of the council's
right. I'm entitled to $8,000 more added to my salary. But I don't take it because that's how the leadership...
You must be real popular at home.
Oh, yeah. That's how the leadership controls your vote. If you accept the money and you don't vote the way leadership wants, they take away that Lulu.
Okay.
You know, if you don't vote the way leadership wants, they hold up your legislation. They'll bounce you from key committees.
Some pieces of your legislation were bottled up until recently for what, 2 years?
The years. Some of my legislation has been bottled up for years.
Is it you or the legislation?
No, it's the leadership. It's not the legislation, because if I've been told.
So it's a reaction to you.
It's a reaction to independent thought. That's wrong. Because, in effect, by getting back at me, trying to get back at me by holding up my legislation, Speaker Christine Quinn and the previous Speaker, Gifford Miller, hurt everybody in this city. Because there's good legislation that, if enacted, would improve the operation of this city. And how dare both of them? How dare both of them hold up good legislation because of their own political agenda or political vindictiveness?
No wonder you're so popular.
I tell the truth.
Oh.
I wish more people would.
Oh, okay. How do you change the council then?
Well, I've actually introduced a number of reforms to reduce the power of the speaker. And if it wasn't for the Daily News...
I noticed that you're the only one sponsoring those pieces
They
of
were
legislation.
afraid to do it. Council members are afraid to sign on. If it wasn't for the Daily News doing a series of editorials, some of my legislation, let's say to eliminate, the ability of the council to vote itself a pay raise, to follow what Congress and the state legislature does. If it wasn't for the Daily News doing a series of editorials, Speaker would never have even written the bill for me to introduce. Somebody's got to bring these issues up. If nobody talks about it, then the public doesn't realize how bad the system is.
Okay, so you're talking about it, but you've got that intermediary between you and the public. How do you get the media to pay attention to you? How do you get your message communicated so at least people have the possibility of listening to it? How do you do it?
It's not easy. It is clearly not easy. It's getting them, you know, whether it's the TV or the print media, you know, like this show, is to give me an opportunity to start talking about the issues. And we're going to have to embarrass some of the media outlets.
How do you do it? How do you run this? I mean, I'm genuinely interested in trying to figure out how Don Quixote defeats the windmill.
Well, first of all, you know, I hate the Don Quixote.
Of course you do. What do you think?
Because Don Quixote fought against imaginary villains, the windmills. I'm not fighting against imaginary villains.
Okay.
These villains are real.
Okay.
These villains are real.
Well, we'll grant you that. Okay,
no,
go ahead.
It's not easy. You know, we just get out there and we hold press conferences and we sit, you know, and we go door to door and we go to street fairs and we try and raise the issues. If the media doesn't cover it, shame on the media. And, you know, maybe some of these outlets, you know, I'm like very upset with the Daily News lately because when they mention, you know, the Democratic primary, it's like Bill Thompson, it's like, where the heck is Tony Avella?
Right. Well, in fact, I mean, in the Quinnipiac poll, you're not even on the list.
Nobody should pay any attention to the Quinnipiac poll.
Well, wait,
because you know why?
Wait. So they're not including you. This is
because
the reason.
Right. You know, how can you do a poll on a Democratic primary and not include an elected official who's running in the Democratic primary?
But you are in the Marist polling.
I'm always in the Marist poll. Thank goodness for that.
As I recall, in the last Marist poll, you got about 1 in 10, 9 or 10%.
It's 9 or 10% in the two polls that they did. But the interesting thing is, they also did myself, Thompson, and Weiner against the mayor individually.
Right.
And that's the interesting part of the poll. The difference between Weiner, who was at the top, and myself at the bottom on the Democratic side was only 7 points. And the difference between how the mayor did against each of us individually was only 4 points. So that shows that whether it's Weiner, Thompson, or myself, we have a base against Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, the question is, does Mike Bloomberg have the majority against you guys?
Oh, absolutely, right now, of course.
And how do you cut into that majority and actually
by start talking about the issues?
Yourself?
And when we get to, after we get
Give me an indictment of Mike Bloomberg in, you know, sentences. Bang, bang,
term
bang,
limits.
Bang.
How dare he? How dare he overturn the will of the people and overturn the term limits law?
2.
The Department of Education. He has ruined the wonderful opportunity we had to remake the old Board of Education from the disaster that it was when they didn't even know how many people were working for it. What does he do? He goes and hires another person, businessman Joe Klein, and between the two of them, boom, run into the ground. The city agencies are a complete failure. This
wait a
getting
minute. Wait a second. I mean, come on.
No, sure.
I mean, the police department is a complete failure. I mean, crime rates are going down.
Yeah, but you go into the minority communities, and what's the reaction about how the police department and the minority communities of color, they are furious that their communities are literally under siege. I don't blame the average officer. I blame the management at the top.
Yeah, but if you look at the polling, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, black New Yorkers give Ray Kelly majority support. No?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay, I may be mistaken.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Ahead.
Fire department. He's closing firehouses all over the city of New York. Do you know, he's putting people's lives in danger. You know, after 9/11, you would have thought that the next mayor, Mike Bloomberg, would take care of the firefighters for their, you know, what happened on 9/11. Mm-hmm. He's done absolutely the opposite and destroyed the morale, you know, in that department. You know, Nicholas Capetta, you know, he's a nice public servant, but he seems to be a tool of the mayor and just doing whatever the mayor wants.
Well, isn't that the case with all the commissioners, essentially? I mean, isn't that his mayoral style? How would your mayoral style differ from that?
Well, one, you give certain amount of, you know, control to the commissioners, and you have a certain amount of oversight. But right now, what the heck is going on? You know,
wait, does he have control and oversight? It seems as if he delegates responsibility
and then doesn't watch what's going on.
Oh, okay.
You know,
so you're saying that there's a lot of people running around doing jobs, and there's not the oversight.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Mike Bloomberg's 2030 plan. He did a big, huge public relations thing about it. All it is an outline. He's doing absolutely nothing to promote the real greening of New York City. The only thing he really promoted in that plan was congestion pricing, which I was totally against that plan. All that would have done was put a tax on the people who can least afford it and charge people from going from one borough to the other. But meanwhile, his agencies are doing the exact opposite of his own plan. You know, nobody's watching the city agencies. I mean, it is really bad. And that's the message we have to get out. You know, if you ask the average person on the street, how do you think the city is going? They might say yes, but then prick the surface.
That's favorable.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then prick the surface and say, well, what's been your experience in your own neighborhood? Then you start to get an outpouring of emotion as how bad the city is operating. The key is for the campaign is to make that connection. Hey, wait a second. Yeah, you're not happy with X, Y, and Z. Well, Mike Bloomberg is responsible for that.
So this is the central strategic problem that you face.
Absolutely. Is making that connection.
Or any candidate, whether it's you, whether it's Billy Thompson, whether it would have been Anthony Weiner. Okay. One of your central foci as a council member has been land use, planning, zoning. I mean, it's in part that's your calling card, if you will.
And good government.
I went good government generally.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about the good government.
Yeah.
Let's talk about land use and zoning. We talked earlier, you've heard the same buzz I have, that when the mayor creates this long-awaited Charter Revision Commission after after he gets sworn in, that the biggest target of that is going to be ULURP, the Uniform Land Use Review
The community
process.
boards and the borough president's role.
Okay.
He wants to do away with it.
Why? What's the logic?
He wants total control. He wants to be the dictator, the king of New York City, because he's not happy if he doesn't get his way. You know, it's interesting when you look at it, all the big projects that he has championed, how many have actually come to fruition? Zero. We should be going in the opposite direction, and that's a big part of my mayoral campaign, is giving more power to the local communities. Right now, even with ULURP, it's planning from the top down. The mayor, Department of City Planning, determine what's in the best interest of every neighborhood in this city. We should be doing it from the bottom up, where people get together in their own neighborhood. We give them the expertise, we give them urban planners, we give them the technical expertise, and they start to plan for their own neighborhood. That's a system.
Wait, stop just a second. Some of this happens in the community boards. I mean, Scott Stringer in Manhattan, for example, has, and we interviewed Scott and one of his graduate student planners from the CUNY system to do exactly that. But you're saying that what you would do is strengthen the community boards rather than weaken or eliminate them.
Right, exactly. We would go much further and strengthen them and give them the power, working with all the groups in their respective districts, to start to do real planning. Not letting the real estate industry in the city control the agenda, which they do now.
Which requires personnel, bucks, and a commitment from somebody. Does it come from the city government? I mean, it seems...
It comes from city government. This proposal system, this bottom-up system, it has been in work works in other parts of the country. And it does function well. We need to change the system in this city, and that's a major component of how I want to run the city. I don't want to run it. It should be the people of this city running it. And having planning at the local level will improve the operation of every community. If you go on the street and ask anybody, pick anybody, and say, where do you live? They're not going to say New York City. They're not going to say the borough. They're going to say the community, and we do very little to promote and preserve the charm and character of our neighborhoods. That's a major focus of my campaign, and that's what we have to do. And if we do it, this city will be a much better place.
In terms of the city's efforts at zoning, we've seen the city upzone areas, but also at the same time, we've seen the city downzone areas to make the zoning more compatible with community needs and interests, at least as perceived by the bureaucrats and the experts. How much power do you give to the top what does this uniform land use review process look like under Tony Avella?
Well, it gets changed completely. Again, it's you still have to have some sort of mechanism to go outside the plan. But basically, it would be a community-based plan from the community into a borough-wide document, into a citywide document, and that becomes the planning document for the entire city.
So is it advisory or?
No, this is real.
This is policy.
This is real
so yours
policy.
is a dramatic change.
Oh, this
from
is
the
revolutionary.
This is real decentralization.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me take the argument that what you will have them is you'll never have development because these neighborhoods do not want to change. So come on, that is stifling or breaking the city.
That is actually, a criticism that has been leveled is you'll get the NIMBY approach, not in my backyard.
Right.
But in the other parts of the country that have this system, that has not been the case. Because when you give people real power, they generally do the right thing. Obviously, you have to have some protections in there, but people will generally do the right thing. And I think there are communities who will accept development as long as it fits in with the character of the community, as long as it's proper.
And they've had some participation and opt into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll get real affordable housing, by the way. What we're doing now, what Mike Bloomberg is doing, is a complete joke. We're not doing affordable housing. We're pushing the middle class and the working class out of this city. We're just building for the rich. And this is Mike Bloomberg's policy. I don't understand who he thinks is going to live here. I mean, nobody can afford the housing that's being built, even the so-called affordable housing components.
Final word. In the unusual event, the implausible
it's not
event,
that unusual.
No, that you lose the mayoral election, what does Tony Avella do?
Listen, I'm not even thinking about losing. If you start to, in your own mind, think you're going to lose, you're lost.
You're in this to the end.
I'm in this to the end. We have an opportunity to win. We have an opportunity to change the very nature of city government and politics at the same time by taking the huge money equation out of it. And that has to be done. Democracy is in trouble in this city. It may be in trouble throughout the entire country, but it's definitely in trouble in this city. Our campaign is about change, real reform, not talk, real reform. And I think once we get that message out, we will win this election and send a message to every metropolitan city in this country that you can change the whole nature of politics.
We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.